Good afternoon, I'm Kirk Matthews from Newsroom 6. A great deal of excitement in the Pacific Northwest at this hour. About 20 minutes ago, the Forest Service reported that Mount St. Helens had begun erupting. Smoke and ash were viewed coming from the top of the 9,000-foot mountain about 45 miles northeast of Portland. With us right now on the phone is Dr. Doug Johnson of the University of Washington in Seattle. Dr. Johnson is a geophysicist and has been following this thing overnight. Dr. Johnson, I wonder if you can tell us what we might expect here, since the fissure evidently just opened up on the top of Mount St. Helens. What might go on during the next few hours?
Well, it seems that the eruption is, if it is in fact an eruption, that it's relatively small. The seismicity has not been great. The magnitudes of these events that we've been recording has not been large. If in fact the ash fall or the material coming out of the volcano is really an eruption, it seems that the eruption is rather small, which means that the total volume of ash coming out of the volcano will be minimal in terms of physical results around the area. There'd be a little bit of ash fallout and maybe some snow melting. If the eruption had become enlarged, or it's a larger eruption in the beginning, then the damage or the amount of ash coming out of the volcano would be that much more.
Dr. Johnson, from a research point of view, isn't this relatively exciting event from your standpoint? This isn't very common in the Cascades or on the West Coast in general, isn't that true?
That's true. The process is relatively rare for the Cascade area. The last time the volcano on the West Coast had erupted was in 1915. That was Mount Lassen. St. Helens had erupted in 1857, and so the result is, as far as seismologists is concerned, this is really one of the first times that a detailed seismic experiment or observations can be made on an erupting volcano in the Cascade area.
Helicopter 6 flew over Mount St. Helens late this afternoon. On board was noted Portland State University geologist Dr. Leonard Palmer. He describes what he saw.
Okay, we're looking at the very summit of the mountain, and it has a large fracture where the whole mountain is cracking in a north-south direction. We see glacial ice that's been broken up about 50, 75 feet high at least. There are fractures that are cutting through not only the ice, but they appear to be cutting through the mountaintop itself. Within the ice, in the summit crater area, we're seeing a large cavity which is approximately 200 to 300 feet across. And around that cavity, we're seeing a large dark zone that looks like it's either been a steam explosion or some kind of an ash eruption. But at this time, it's very quiet. As we approached the volcano, we thought we saw a dark cloud. So just before we got here, we may have had some kind of a steam explosion or some kind of a volcanic ash eruption. As we look from this side of the mountain, we can see how very significantly and deeply the mountain crest is broken. Below us, the entire mountain crest is moving off toward the north.
Do you see a real change between what it was a couple days ago?
Well, a couple days ago, none of these fractures were here, and what we're seeing is all new material, new action on the mountaintop. We do have a live volcano. Whether it will get bigger or stop at this point, we do not know.
That's the next question. Is there any way of telling whether we're going to have more? Could this be all of it? Would it generally increase? What are the odds right now?
Well, we're going to know after it happens. So what we'll do is just document what we're seeing and keep watching. At least it's an extremely exciting event, and it has reached the surface. Here we're looking directly down into the hole. We're seeing the upper part of the volcano. There are avalanches within the hole. Ice is falling down into the hot rock area, but there is no steam. There are no vapors coming out from that hole at this point.
Scientists, geologists, the media have been flying over that mountain all afternoon, watching for signs that would indicate whether the ice cream cone-shaped mountain would begin throwing out molten lava. Late this afternoon, there were at least 2 reports that lava was evident in another fissure. National scientific attention is being focused on the mini volcano right now because it is a rare occurrence in the West and because of the relatively young age of Mount St. Helens. Helicopter 6 is on the ground at this time refueling. We plan to send them back up to Mount St. Helens with Dr. Palmer aboard. Hopefully he'll be able to give us an update on the report of the second fissure that opened up, out of which is spewing that molten lava. We have more on some side events, particularly with regard to emergency services preparations. Now Jim has that. Senate committees are now hearing testimony which could eventually lead to the FDA giving full recognition to the DMSO. I believe now we have a live Helicopter 6 shot of Mount St. Helens, which is very much in the news today after scientists found two fissures opening up atop the mountain, the first opening about 1:13 and then later in the afternoon about 4 o'clock. I believe Alan Breeze is aboard Helicopter 6 right now, and if you can hear us, Alan, what seems to be happening up there now?
Well, Kirk, we really can't tell very much right now. We had to go back to Vancouver to refuel. From this angle, you really can't see the side of the mountain, the east side of the mountain, where there is the gray spot that we saw before. We have Dr. Palmer here with us, though, and maybe you can tell us what you think right now.
Right, we're looking from almost due south on the mountain and climbing up toward the mountain. We're looking at the side of the mountain at this point, which has not been affected very much, except the upper peak and on the right where the shadow is. That isn't all shadow. Part of that is some kind of rock debris that is scattered out over the mountainside toward the east, toward the right-hand side of our view. As we move toward the mountain, we're going to see the fractures on the top of the mountain that were there before. It's like a large white egg that's been cracked, and there's a chicken just about to hatch. From word we have is that maybe we'll see a part of the chicken when we get there.
We may see some lava then. As you can tell, it'll probably be a few more minutes until we get close enough to the mountain and on the right side of the mountain to be able to do very much with it. And that's the situation from now, Kirk.
Alan, if we could, we'd like to ask Dr. Palmer a couple of questions. Earlier today, can you hear us?
Yes, go ahead. I'll repeat those questions to Dr. Palmer.
Okay, Alan, thanks. Earlier in the day, he said that it would happen very slowly. Is he surprised at the quickness with which the other fissure opened up?
Doctor, are you surprised now with the quickness at which the fissure opened up? You said earlier in the day that it might happen very slowly. Does this seem to be unfolding at about the speed that you might have expected?
Yes, this isn't very surprising at all. What we're saying when we say it'll open up slowly is to try and reassure people that the mountain is going to jump up in the air and fall down in their backyard.
Okay, does that satisfy you then, Kirk?
That's fine for now, Alan. Are there any landmarks? We've had some calls from interested persons with property in the area, and they're somewhat concerned, needless to say. Are there any landmarks you can give us with regard to where those fissures are located?
Perhaps Dr. Palmer again would be the best person. Is there any landmarks, perhaps, for people in the area to locate as to where those fissures are located as to some other things in the area? Can you?
Well, unfortunately, the fractures are right across the top of the mountain, and without being in an airplane up above it, it's very difficult to see where they are, particularly from the southern part, southern side that Portland is viewing it from. It's almost as if someone had decided we can't watch all the fun. However, from the northern side, I think those fissures are going to start being large enough that they'll be visible, particularly if we get enough heat from the volcanism. Are we live on the
Yes,
scene now?
sir.
If you look at the volcano from this side, we have a very interesting view of something that looks like a toboggan run coming down the south flank of the volcano. That is an old lava flow that has come out not too far in the past, certainly younger than 400 years. And that toboggan run is actually a hot flow of lava that's built up levees on either side with a chilling rock, and the hot rock has flowed out through the center, much like a toboggan run.
Okay, very good. That's it from here, Kirk.
Alan, Jim Rouse speaking. If you can hear me, one more question. What is it that geologists and the geophysicists expect to learn from this natural event?
Dr. Palmer, what do the geologists and geophysicists hope to learn from this event as it's unfolding now? What do you hope to learn?
Well, one thing that's always interesting is how the world got here. And scientifically, it's very interesting to see what kinds of chemical processes are occurring and what kinds of physical processes are operating within a mountain of this kind. On the other hand, it's extremely important to find out what kinds of dangers might be involved in an eruption of this kind. So it's a learning process.
We don't know very much about the Cascades and the formation of the Cascades. Should this really tell us a lot about that?
Well, certainly it's an experience that we haven't had since early 1900.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it from the helicopter, Kirk.
Alan, thank you very much, and thank you, Dr. Palmer. We expect to have another live shot of Mount St. Helens from Helicopter 6 shortly. Right now, it's time for Dr. John Walsh to take a second look at the weather, and as you saw in those shots of the mountain, there are fewer clouds over the mountain now than earlier, and that means something. John?
Well, it means
John, our telecopter has been sending us some very good pictures so far of Mount St. Helens, and we have Alan Breeze, the reporter aboard the telecopter, cameraman Mike Slowick, and technician Tom Gleason ready to send us some more pictures. They're hovering now right over the mountain, and we'll see if we can pick them up live. Alan, what's new?
Right. There seems to be a great side of the mountain. We're just approaching the east side of the mountain now. And Dr. Leonard Palmer does agree that there is a great deal more ash present now than there was before. We still do not see any lava yet. Dr. Palmer, what's your impression as we're closer now?
We're still approaching the mountain from the south-southeast, less than a mile away. And since we saw this mountain about 4 o'clock, we're seeing more debris scattered across the slopes. We had very clear fractures across the mountain at that time and a very light coating of dust and debris that had come out of the summit area. At this point, we're seeing that a lot of those fractures appear to be dusted with new rock debris, so apparently we're having some kind of
As you may well understand, we do have some technical difficulties. The helicopter hovering over the volcano, and there's a lot of static breakup there. We'll try to get back to them later in the program. Right now, it's time for Bill Schwanbeck to take a second look at sports. He wants to talk about the Portland Timbers soccer team and some of those new acquisitions that they may be or may not be acquiring. Wheeling and dealing from sports right after this. We'll have to wait for a moment for sports from Bill Schwanbeck. We understand we may have ironed out those microwave difficulties from Telecopter 6, hovering now over Mount St. Helens, and we hope we have Alan Breeze. Alan, can you hear me?
Yes, you do, Jim. We can hear you fine now. We have even a better view now of what's going on around here. I'll have Dr. Palmer, since he's the expert here, just go ahead and describe it as best he can.
Problems. That's what makes live television so much fun. We hope you've enjoyed the program so far as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Right now, Bill Schwanbeck wants to look at sports. He's here because Rick Metzger is in Phoenix at this hour.
Well, the big news story this day, of course, is the occurrence on Mount St. Helens. No matter what you want to call it, geologists are referring to it as volcanic activity. That's quite a news story. Right now, we have some tape for you to look at as Ken Wu talks to us from the Emergency Services Center in Vancouver. Ken?
Well, Jim, right now, the Forest Service has a plane orbiting over the area where the crater is. There is some activity on the top, some steam coming up, but it seems like pretty much of the activity has quieted down. For a while there, the crater on the top was getting larger and larger, and it appears to have stopped for the moment. There's really not much else to report because it's starting to get very, very dark up there, and the Forest Service people are going to maintain a watch throughout the evening to see what this will do. There is no lava. There were reports that lava was coming out of it. There is no lava at this point. Again, people who don't need to be up there, please stay away. Watch us on Channel 6. We will have a special on at 7 o'clock tonight.
Okay, Ken, thanks very much. We might add also that Ken will be reporting to us live from Vancouver on any late developments that the Forest Service might have with regard to emergency evacuation procedures because of the eruption of smoke and ash from the about the 7,000-foot level of Mount St. Helens. Interestingly enough, there are, as you might well imagine, a number of helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft circling Mount St. Helens. In fact, so many that the pilots have established among themselves a racetrack-type rule where everybody is turning counterclockwise around that snow-capped peak so that by late this afternoon you can see, get these good shots that we took earlier this afternoon with Telecopter 6. Once again, we want to remind you that we will have a special report on the eruption on Mount St. Helens at 7 o'clock tonight. We will have live guests in the studio, experts, geologists, geophysicists who can give us the information that we need to give you a better idea of exactly what's happening up there. Jim?
We should mention that roadblocks have now been set up on the southwest side of Mount St. Helens near Cougar to keep tourists out. Earlier we have been told that that area was being evacuated, the areas of Cougar and Swift Village. Now local fire chief officials Fire chiefs, that is, say that's wrong. There is no evacuation. However, there is concern that tourists are bunched up now near Cougar, looking at the mountain. If they do have to evacuate, those people will be blocking the exits. That's the news for now. Bill Schwanbeck, John Walls, and myself will be back at 11. And don't forget the Mount St. Helens special at 7 o'clock. Good evening.